Live from Bag End, this is Derailed Trains of Thought.
All right. Well, hi, Tim.
Hey, Nick.
We're actually podcasting again.
We are. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I've had about 3 breakfasts so far, but
we're very full here, and as long as we don't get too much stuff out of this fridge, we'll be okay.
Crack the dishes, crack the plates. That's what Bill Bagan hates. Is that how it goes?
Unfortunately, though, Nick, when we made our way, as awesome as it is here to be at Bag End, we forgot to bring our nicer mic, so we're using an older one.
Yeah,
today.
we're using a Took mic.
But hopefully this will help keep you staying on mic as opposed to last time when you were like off mic.
Well, yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed last episode.
Yes, hopefully it made some sense to you.
Yeah, and if not, keep with it. Eventually it will.
Hopefully you will have learned our sense of humor by now and can tell when we're kidding and when we're not.
We're not kidding right now. Okay.
All right.
So,
anyway, moving on. I guess let's just dive right in. Dive into our first segment, Story School. So today we're going to talk about beginnings.
and we'd actually held off on this one for quite a while on purpose.
Well, yes, on purpose. Because, our first episode was about endings.
So, and we always kind of said that we would end with beginnings, and we're not ending, but we thought it was a good time, end of the year, end of our second year.
And we are kind of facing a transition period, which we'll talk about in the second half of the show.
So you have to keep listening.
Yes. But in the meantime, beginnings. And, Nick, we'll probably talk a lot about introductions and origins and setting stuff up. But also, as, whenever you're starting a project, especially as a writer, beginnings is always the hardest part. It's always getting the first word on paper or in your Word document that's the hardest.
In some ways.
Well, okay, maybe not for you.
No, well, I mean, what I mean is, the start of a story is way easier than about the 3rd page.
Okay.
Well, just because, to me, if you have an idea, you can just start writing. And numerous times I've written about a page, and then I found my beginning, and I tore out that page and started again. Normally, if I have an idea, I can get started. It's not always where my beginning ends up, if that makes any sense. Sometimes I have to fish around for my beginning. Like, until I actually put something on paper, I don't know exactly what the latest I can start. I always like to start as late as I can in the story. I mean, beginning, once you get started, starting that next word is hard. But I think if you have an idea, words on a page sometimes is easy. Good words on a page is not necessarily.
Right. See, I know for me, sometimes I can be brainstorming a story for weeks, months before I actually, would sit down to actually begin the thing. And then the problem is, you have all these ideas, but then forming all that to a head and actually making it a reality is where it becomes a real issue for me sometimes.
And I have that as well. And sometimes the problem is, and I don't know if this is so much beginning or just writing in general, is that as soon as you put a word down on paper, it suddenly is not as cool as it was in your head.
Yes, this is true.
I mean, suddenly, all those dreams of light and hope that you had, you put on paper and you're like, what? That's not even remotely what I wanted to say.
And then from a video perspective, it's really easy to dream up stuff, but then there's so much involved in making something that, especially pre-production, always stresses me out. Because that's when I realize, oh man, I don't have nearly enough crew to do this, or people, or there's always something that you don't have in good enough abundance to really pull off your vision, you think, and then that can, you have to fight that. You have to fight that discouragement in whichever project you're working on.
And I think that's the same with writing, because especially if it's something you've thought for a long time, then you write the first scene or whatever, and you're like, that's not, I wonder, that's not a good enough scene, or I'm not setting up, and then you just get bogged down trying to rework the same intro. Mm-hmm. And that happens sometimes. And then sometimes they can get a start. I just have an idea. I'll have this guy named Stren talking to this guy named Fred, and they'll fight something. And then you're like, oh, wait, I need a plot.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's easy to get a character going, or a setting, or something, and then he was attacked. And then you have to say, okay, but why? You don't even know yet.
Mm.
So here's an actual question before beginnings, pre-beginnings. What do you do for a story, either video or whatever, to get, you mean, what needs to happen before you write
Uh,
or film?
for me,
I mean, that's pre-production obviously is an actual thing.
yeah. Well, by the time you're in pre-production, you usually already have a script
Okay,
of some
that's
sort.
true.
So it's a little different. But I mean, I guess for me, when I want to start writing, I want to have some sort of idea of where I'm going before I start. I don't quite do as much exploratory stuff as you do. I don't think. I mean, I've done some.
Yeah.
But I think I tend to, and this is one reason why I don't write as much anymore as probably I used to, or obviously nearly as much as you do, because I don't know. I like having a pretty clear vision of it before I even sit down, which is not always the best thing because you do have to do a lot of that exploring when you're actually at the paper.
Well, I think it really depends whether you're, people seem to be on a scale from very organic to very outline pre-planned.
Right.
And depending on my project, it'll be different. The Unremarkable Squire was actually all outlined because I don't know why. I actually wrote outlines for like every chapter, which I'd never ever do. And it kept, and there was still a lot of wiggle room within, but it had and in some ways then it has one of the most structured plots in some ways. That there's a very, there's my characters go from one spot outwards, and there's kind of a change and inwards, and it's kind of a mirror image of itself, and it's all nice and literary.
And in that way, it may be one of your most marketable books that you've done.
And then there's things like Girl Called Snort, where I just sort of
literally write a chapter at a time.
Yeah, and early on I just started it, and before it was anyone much saw it but Natasha, it was a paragraph serial actually. Like I'd write a paragraph or two at a time, and then I'd ask her a question like, "Hey, give me a name or give me this," and she'd give me some stuff, and we kind of went like that. But I still think I need, even though I'm more organic than not, I still need some sort of idea that holds it together. Some sort, either a character that motivates me or a theme, and that's usually, I tend to write a lot with, this is the idea I want to convey. And if the idea doesn't interest me, I can't write it. Like I think I'm not a very good plot. I can't just make a plot and write it. I mean, I could, but I have no interest in it unless there's something it's saying or something it's illustrating.
And even your outline story, The Unremarkable Squire, has a theme. I mean, the theme is really servanthood.
Yeah, and I think that probably came out more in my writing than in the outline. The outline, honestly, was half my well, I don't know the outline, but some of my thought processes, I had just had this phrase, the good, the bad, and the ugly in my head, and the three princesses actually match up to that.
Okay.
There's a good one, there's a bad one, there's an ugly one.
Okay. Nice.
So I had weird structural things, and it was influenced by King Lear, which I just spelled his name backwards in the story.
I hadn't even caught that.
And I had all kinds of things that got thrown into it, and then the servanthood came out because it's not interesting to me unless there's a theme. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the outline. I like the idea. It was conceived beginnings as sort of a long-held idea of having a story about misfits. I had for a long time in high school, I had this idea of like when like a training class for like heroes, but it'd be like all these misfits that would get band together and they'd be the real heroes. Like the wizard who couldn't do anything and but that was kind of a cheesy idea in some ways. But that's what structured early on Squire, and then as I got going writing Obed, once I found him and his servanthood, I think that's when I could really write it.
Okay.
Because before it's an interesting idea, but there's nothing to grab onto except just satire, I guess.
Sure. That might be a good transition to talking a little bit more about the actual story beginnings. Yeah. How do you introduce your story? And
in media res.
And it does seem like a very helpful thing. Well, obviously, any story will have this, and where stories will put this in their opening chapters or opening period varies. But you do have to introduce your main characters in some way early on. If he's a character the audience has never heard of before, that may involve kind of the beginning of the hero's journey, putting him in his own home setting, in a familiar setting, and then kind of introducing the problems.
I'm really lousy at doing that kind of traditional, set them in their normal setting and then take them out of it. I tend to just throw them into something, which has its benefits of being immediate but doesn't always have the benefits of being able to see the characters reacting to the change, which I don't know is necessary every story.
Right. No, I think it does depend on the story. Some stories do work out really well starting. Isn't that called in medias res?
In something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
When you start right in the center, the classic Star Wars: A New Hope. You sit down. There's no credits, and then there's a spaceship flying over you. I know my parents were saying, normally you could come 5 minutes late and the credits were still going, but Star Wars you couldn't do that.
Right.
You were like, what? The movie started,
and then there's a battle. Yeah. And sometimes if it's that's a genre that was very innovative.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's a genre that people are already familiar with, then it's definitely okay. Like when I did my zombie spoof Clash thing, which we'll probably talk about later. I just started with them running down the street, running away from zombies, because people kind of can grasp onto that pretty quickly.
And that's a very TV shows, got your cop drama. Every cop drama starts with some guy dead.
Yeah.
Or how he's done. No, actually, how he dies. X-Files. I used to watch X-Files all the time. Every beginning of X-Files was some random person in a random creepy small town living their lives, and then something weird happens, and then he dies horribly, gorily, and then commercial. And then doo-doo,
My family, we were just joking about this with NCIS, because we watch a lot of CBS crime shows around the house. Well, not a lot, but there are certain ones we watch, like NCIS. And with NCIS Los Angeles the other night, there's like this guy, some character you've never seen before, Rich. He's talking with a buddy or something on his video phone, and then he steps out to his balcony. And so I was like, okay, guys, is it going to be a sniper bullet or is a bomb about to go off? And we were, kind of guessing, and it was a bomb. A bomb went off. Because you knew right from the start, before they showed every episode, if you don't see one of the main characters, at least, if some person you've never seen before the opening credits, the guy is about to die, or they're about to find the dead body somewhere.
Well, this is especially in TV, your first, the teaser
right.
is all about setting up the rest of the conflict, at least the immediate pressing conflict. Someone's dead, someone's accused of murder, someone's lost their child, whatever.
Well, and a recurring series kind of has the benefit of you already know the main character.
Yeah.
So you can kind of set up the problem beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was thinking about the Avengers movie recently.
Okay.
Because the neat thing I really love the opening of that, because it's kind of neat that it starts off with S.H.I.E.L.D., which, up until now, with all these Marvel movies, S.H.I.E.L.D. have been kind of, supporting characters.
Yeah.
And they still are in this movie to a degree. But this prologue starts off with, at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, we only see mainly S.H.I.E.L.D. people, and then Loki shows up. And but it kind of sets the stage for this big problem that they're going to have to deal with. And it's just a really exciting way. I've always liked the opening gambit, where you have sometimes it's a like an action sequence that has nothing to do with the main plot, but sometimes it's kind of a prologue to the main plot. So I think that's always a neat thing to do with action.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, the whole intro is only about teaching you what does Indiana Jones do and what kind of person is he. Mm-hmm. It has nothing. I mean, it does connect kind of to the.
There's Belloc. You introduce him too, yeah.
And I think that's a very common way too, to give you a scene that gets the story rolling, but isn't actually story yet.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of sets the stage for not only who is this character, but what sort of movie is this going to be,
or even what sort of book,
or what sort of book
it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I got for my birthday Shada. I don't know how you say it.
Okay.
It's a famous Doctor Who episode that was never filmed, written by Douglas Adams. And they recently made a novelization of it.
Uh-huh.
I just read the first chapter. It's like 3 pages. That's all I had time for. But it just gets you right in. It introduces the villain. He's doing something, you don't know what. But, you're interested. And it also introduces the writing style. I think for a book that's important. Mm-hmm. That you introduce a style that hopefully will keep up, or even is the best right at the beginning there.
Sure.
But it's a very, very kind of humorous Douglas Adams style humor, which I'm like, awesome. I'm like, I'm gonna like this book. Or sometimes in older novels, they'll do kind of almost an overview early on. You got Tale of Two Cities, it's best times, the worst. They'll kind of, give you the premise of the whole book, because they do such big topics sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Brothers Karamazov starts with an outline of the family and how they're all related and what their personalities are, so that you can kind of hit the ground running, I guess. And because some movies do that too, they'll start with a narration kind of like, "This is my family."
That's true. Yeah, or even the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the talk about the Rings of Power sort of thing.
Or what were they just watching? Oh, Hunger Games. We watched the riff tracks of Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah?
Really, really good. But they were making a joke about, should we have to read the movie? At the beginning, they do the text of, what the Hunger Games are all about. Even though later they then do the video of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they have to do the text at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
But they want to set up the world. I mean, setting up...
Right.
What is this genre? What is this world? Where is this... Getting all those... And that's the fun part. Well, the interesting part. You want to get all these basic things done quickly, interestingly, without... Apparently, I'm not necessarily one of these people, I don't think. But I know people say that beginning writers didn't just take 20 pages to get the plot started. Like, they'll just, people saying, Dr. Hensley, my writing teacher, say, he'd read things where, people just come and say, hi, how are you doing? They just have conversations about nothing. But I guess the author is trying to figure out what they're doing. Which I never could do that because I get bored if I'm not doing something interesting.
That kind of reminds me of when I tried to start this one Randy Alcorn book, which I know you've read at least one Randy Alcorn book. I tried starting this book called Deadline, which I know my parents really enjoyed. But I couldn't get past the first 2 chapters because they started with this giant information dump is what it felt like to me. Which, I mean, I guess with Dickens that works, but in this case it felt like they were...
If it make it interesting, you can... Yeah. And it's, old.
Right. Well, it's old, it's classic. You feel like an obligation to read it.
It's a different style. You just accept it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was talking about this car accident or something, and this guy was remembering everything he knew about his 2 best friends or something, and I was just this is a lot of information to try to just... I'd rather learn all this organically rather than you just kind of telling me.
Yeah, and that's the trick, especially in a longer, big book. What do you introduce? What's necessary to introduce right away, and what can you fill in later? Or even long-term shows that have a overall arc. How much you really need to know early on.
That's true. I mean, think about Lost. Well, we have a plane crash.
Yeah.
There are people that are desperately that are frantic
for 15
right
minutes. I probably said this in the podcast before, but the first 15 minutes of the pilot Lost is one of the best 15 minutes of TV.
Yeah.
I've watched it numerous times. I'm always fascinated by it. And because what's fascinating is how well they give you just little tiny hints of all the people. Because there's a lot of castaways, but you don't get much of any of them. It's not like they feel compelled like in a disaster movie. Disaster movie. You spend the first half hour let's see this person take his kid to school so you can see that he has a child, and see this person who is a businessman and see that he's he's a horrible person, and
It's no, you're there at the scene of the accident. We'll fill in the details of who these people are.
And they have the flashbacks, which help.
Right.
I mean, the whole structure.
And they know they have a whole season to develop these characters.
There's some movies where, the first 20 minutes is just...
Yeah.
And sometimes they do it really well, like Ocean's 11.
Okay.
They introduce all those... all the 11 people very quickly, very smoothly, very cleverly. I mean, when they're casting the people, it just goes real quick, and you're like, oh, okay, so they can get on with the plot.
Right.
Because you've got to introduce all these different people, but you don't want to spend half hour doing it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about character introduction, talked about kind of setting up the world that you're going to be in, an opening kind of.
And I really think the style, you don't want to make it feel like it's a contemporary novel and suddenly, halfway through it's a, supernatural stuff. Unless
you're really going for that.
Unless you're really going for that, yeah. Or even, your writing style hopefully should be, if it's going to be a narrator talking to his kid, start early on and don't try to pull the whole, talking to the audience thing halfway through.
Here's a question for you, and this goes into more origin stuff, I guess, because we've been talking about how some new writers will try their opening scenes. They're trying to learn their characters on their own sort of thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever retroactively inserted backstory into a character? You didn't know that this is part of a character's past.
Oh yeah.
And then later it came up that this is part of his past.
So Strin and Fred, which is probably my most organic story in many ways, because it's never really had an outline except in my head, and early on it didn't have an outline. Yeah, I made the whole characters have probably the one that someone could accuse me the most of being unfair, or you didn't set that up at all. Would be one of the servants of the Empress. In book 2, is revealed to be the Empress's sister.
Oh, I do vaguely remember that. Yeah. It's been a while since I read book 2.
Which is not a big... I mean, it's a minor character, and it plays, I think, emotionally really well into... It's not surprising emotionally because all these Kree are very
Close.
Very close, and this is her favorite one. And so it's not surprising per se, but I just made that up. You know, it just seemed natural at the time. You know, it's probably a horrible, you know.
Dr. Hensley will come and berate you now.
See, this is where, you know, something like on TV you can get away with that because partly TV is organic by nature.
Right.
You know, and comic books and stuff like that. I mean, you don't want to do retcons if you can help it. You know, where you're like, oh, I didn't really mean that.
Yes.
And occasionally,
yes.
I don't think I've done that yet. Because generally, when I write a character, even if I haven't, and this is because I tend to write very character-oriented. Like, when I write a character, I never do an outline of a character. I never write their personality down or anything. But I have a kind of an innate feel for what they would do. And sometimes when they're in new situations, I find new parts of the character, but I think I'm pretty good about being internally consistent within the character.
Okay.
So even when I pull something new out that I never really mentioned, I feel like it's natural to the character.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I think so.
Again, you know, critics can argue me, but
So
that's my biggest. I think that's the one I've done it. Yeah, but I don't think I've ever done it with anyone else. No, I don't think so. Not I can think of offhand.
Just curious.
Story project. I don't think we ever pulled anything.
No. The big secrets we had planned for story projects.
Yeah, we did plan. I like to plan half and half.
Yeah.
See the pants.
Yeah.
Now people like origin stories though. Like I don't like starting at the beginning of anything. I like starting in the middle of things.
Oh, I see. Okay, at the very beginning.
You know, Buckethead. You know, I'm riding a rocket. You know, well, I've been working on Sorzo, which is this barbarian story we wrote for this Pulp Fiction contest we've mentioned before. Not contest, but project. But it starts with him basically emerging from the belly of a dinosaur that he had been kind of hiding in.
I remember that introduction. It was like anything unlike you've had read from me before. It was like all gross and.
But the thing is,
actually, no, I take that back. I suppose the closest thing would be that mound.
Oh, that mound.
The mound
in Fred. Yeah.
But
I guess what I find interesting is that where the story starts really is that Sorzo at home gets this dream, and then he leaves home and travels to find the person who called him. Where the story actually starts is him almost there, having already gone through most of his travels. So I tend to start in the middle of things, and then fill you in later. But I find that more interesting. Yeah, I could do the story. I could start him waking up and doing all the travel, but I didn't find that... You could write it, but I didn't find it essential. So I didn't always start... I tend to start in the middle of things.
Sure.
So I like that, personally. I mean... I've heard people say, you know, like Girl Called Sonora, just starts with her leaving the house. You don't know her parents, you don't know her situation or anything. Some people think I should establish him more or something. I don't know what it would add.
I suppose it would be kind of, I don't know, that could be an interesting addition there in that sense because, you know, she's always talking about her parents and stuff, but do you ever really see them that much?
No, you never see them.
Which I guess is, you know, that's an interesting twist in itself. Like, I mean, because, I mean, you do kind of care for her and her family and stuff, even though you don't know her parents at all.
You could argue either way.
And then, on the other hand, it also kind of creates an added feeling of mystery because you don't know why her parents did the things they did in their past and stuff like that. So,
apology to the audience for constantly referring to stories you have not read. But unfortunately, half of my stuff is not easily readable at this point.
True. What did you ever do with A Girl Called Sonora? Isn't actually available anywhere?
No, I want to do something with it, but I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's certainly publishable in some manner.
Right.
So, but origin stories. You know, people love origin stories of, well, superheroes, or like, you know, things like, you know, you watch Silence of the Lambs, and suddenly you want an origin story on Hannibal Lecter for some reason. That people like to know why someone became who they were, or, you know, how did James Bond get started, or how, you know, you tell the story, and then they want to know, but why that?
Yeah.
Nowadays. And I don't know if that was always so big of a deal. Nowadays, well, but it's a big deal.
At the same time, you know, it does kind of validate what you're saying about, it also seems very modern to start kind of in the middle of things to kind of, you know, hit the ground running.
Yeah.
But in some ways, you know, those origin stories are more interesting after you know the character to a certain extent. Comic book characters are a little bit different because people know they've seen the pictures around, so there's a little bit of familiarity with them, even if they don't know the character very well.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, you know, if a show goes off, then you want more stories about how did you get here, what happened, you know.
Yeah.
Who was the first person on the island?
Have you watched any of this new show, Arrow?
I have not.
About Green Arrow?
My brother has.
It is similar to Lost in some ways in that it has flashbacks a lot, and the flashback because he had been deserted on an island, and that's how he learned to basically be an awesome fighter and stuff. And he's not alone on the island. It's not it looks at first like it's a castaway sort of thing. No, this was like apparently this island was like I think a holding place for prisoners or something.
Okay.
So there's like this militia and stuff. There's still a lot that we haven't been revealed in flashbacks yet. But very lost structure like that. So
Interesting.
So there you have, in the present day, he's in the city being a vigilante and stuff like that. But then he flashes back to the island.
Well, but I think, and though my preference is start in the middle thing, I think that it really benefits most stories to start at the beginning, as long as the beginning is close to the start of the action.
Right.
You got your Robinson Crusoe and your Treasure Island, all kinds of things, very, very linear, very interesting. Just you have a chapter to kind of know the characters, and then something happens, and you're set.
Yeah. Occasionally, you see a story where they'll start at some place that's close to the end of the movie, and then flashback, and then you see how they got to that spot.
Yeah. Well, the TV episodes do that 24 hours previously.
Yeah. Right. But you don't want to overdo that sort of thing. I'd say you have to have a pretty good reason for it.
And sometimes you can play people with the intro. I was just thinking Inception, because they're in I'm trying to remember how it worked. They're in the old dream, and then I remember you, and then they flash back to meeting him in the Japanese when he was younger, and then you're inside a dream, and you get out of that dream, and then you're inside another dream, so that the intro itself is introducing you to every element without having to... you see it firsthand as it's happening, while simultaneously being, your mind's barely catching up with what's going on. The fine line of, almost being confused.
I haven't seen that movie since I saw it in the theater.
Oh, okay. I've seen it once since, yeah.
Because, I don't really remember much of the intro at all because it was so, borderline confusing.
Yeah. Second time through, it makes a lot more sense. So I think we've probably...
I think we've covered our bases here, yeah.
And again, in practice, you have to find your own way, but, it's really just, the beginnings are essential nowadays. People have there's so many options that if you don't get it, if you don't hit it quick, which I think is why starting in the middle things is more common now than it was. Because unless you start quick or something interesting or some nice witty dialogue or something.
Yeah, people don't have time to see the person go through their home life and then decide to go on this big journey. They want to see them right in the throes of the action. If possible.
I never read Hunger Games, but Natasha read me the first chapter. She's picked in the first chapter.
Yeah.
You just within a chapter you should get things.
Actually, that would be, in some ways, though, that is one, she does set time. There's a bit of time of introducing her family, at least, and her relationship with Dale. But
they have the tension the whole time.
Yes, there's kind of this undercurrent of this is going to happen later today.
A good thing, if you want to, if you don't want to start straight in the middle, a good thing to use is tension or mystery, a sense that something's overhanging our characters.
Yes.
Whether it's something nefarious or just... I'm late for, a very important date, and you're wondering what it is.
That is an important point. Mystery can be a very, hooking your reader, getting them really intrigued in what's going on.
If you need a couple chapters to get them into your world, be it so complex or because you want to show certain things, as long as you have some sense of, very early on, some sort of direction and at least some question.
Beginning of Rope. The first shot is, after the credits, is these two guys choking this dude. And then they stuff him in a chest and talk about the dinner.
You're like, what is going on?
It's a great...
And then it slowly unwinds. Because then they do the exposition. Because honestly, if you hook them, you can do exposition forever after that.
That's true.
People did put up with it.
Have you seen Skyfall yet?
I have not. I would like to.
Yeah, that's one of those things that has a nice opening gambit of action, but then it ends right before the opening credits. Ends with James Bond falling off this train and seemingly to his death, which it's not really to his death.
Short movie,
beginning of the James Bond movie, but still you're like,
it's good.
Yeah, it hooks you. So hopefully you're hooked now, and you'll listen through the rest of this episode now that we're actually halfway through it. It's kind of a long beginning.
Yeah. Well, what is it?
All right. Anyway, we'll go on to our next segment, which will be soundtrack.
For a soundtrack today, I decided to pick a remix from Final Fantasy IV, technically. Those in like every Final Fantasy known to man. It's that kind of I don't know what the official title is, but they play. It's the prologue music. It's not
Prelude.
No, it's not Prelude.
It's not Prelude.
No, it's the other intro music. The da 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 da.
Oh.
They do it in Final Fantasy IV in the beginning credits.
Oh, okay. Sometimes they do that at the end. So
I guess nowadays they do it at the end.
Yeah. I don't remember in Kingdom Hearts. It's called like March Caprice for piano or something. But I don't know. I don't know if that's just that version.
Yeah, I think it. Anyways, I think it's called Prologue for Final Fantasy IV,
Okay.
which is where this is from. Because you do your little intro, and then it's the credits. Like they do it like a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start the rest of the game.
Sure.
So this is a remix from that. It's called Anna Prologue because it's analog and prologue because it's done very 80s, and it's remixed by another soundscape. So enjoy.
One, two, three.
And we're back.
Hi, hopefully you enjoyed that.
Yes. And now it is time for our next segment. What if? Alright, so everyone on the internet is probably speculating about this, so we figured, hey, let's do it too. We've talked about Star Wars often enough in this podcast. We have to talk about Disney buying Star Wars.
Yes.
And mainly, what if some of our favorite directors, or maybe not so favorite directors,
Would direct the new movie
new
that's
Star Wars
apparently
movie.
coming out in 2000 what? 15?
15, I think is right.
Wow.
So, yeah, weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
We started off this year never thinking we'd see another Star Wars movie, at least not as long as George Lucas was alive.
Yeah.
And suddenly,
And no Admiral Thrawn.
it's happening. No, absolutely. Anyway, so let's not speculate about what they're going to talk about what the movie will be about. Well, except for they'll depend on what director you go with. So there have been a lot of names thrown around. Some of them have already said no.
I haven't actually heard anyone who said no. Wait, someone said yes, didn't they? Or
it said they would.
Or no, that screenplay. Someone who did.
Oh yeah, someone who.
Who
Yeah,
was it?
I think that they've said who's going to do the screenplay.
Someone related to Pixar, wasn't it originally?
Maybe.
Once Upon a Time.
Maybe.
Okay, I forget.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But we'll just go with you. Should we talk about what if some directors who we know won't be doing it?
Yeah.
I know Steven Spielberg said he won't.
Okay.
Because
it's Lucas. I mean,
it's his friend's property. It'd be like me trying to write.
Well, if if Spielberg would do it, it'd be about a Padawan who's about 8, and he's lost his parents.
Yes.
And there would be aliens, luckily. So
this is beginning to sound kind of like Phantom Menace, actually.
True. Did Spielberg direct Phantom Menace?
I hope not.
What else would he?
I don't. Actually, it's kind of hard for me to pin Spielberg down.
That's true. He is. I mean, he's all over the place.
I would say that I think probably a big part of it would be about Luke would be trying to mentor his son.
Okay, yeah.
Because you have to have the father-son relationship.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it. But other than that,
and questioning why are we even still fighting this war? And there'd be some really brutal action scenes, like Saving Private Ryan sort of Jedi battles.
Yeah, but it would be very heartwarming in the end.
Yeah,
because it's Star Wars
and Tom Hanks somewhere,
possibly.
Tom Hanks in Star Wars.
That'd be that does not compute.
I wouldn't say that about Samuel Jackson either. But
well, I don't. Samuel Jackson. I think you can plug into almost any franchise now.
That's true. Hey, he was in Avengers. He can go ahead and move over to another Disney thing now.
Yeah, why not? So all right. Well, speaking of,
he is hard to pin down, but it would be.
Yeah, because he does all kinds. I mean,
there might be more Ewoks.
There might be more Ewoks. I could see that. I mean, the only thing you can really pin down.
It really depends on what he's feeling like. Whether he feels like doing an old school himself, or whether he feels like doing a historical.
Yeah, historical,
or like
Spielberg,
or one of his like crazy war ones.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I feel like for a Star Wars genre, he would stay pretty true to his
old
old
more Indiana
self.
Jones-ish,
more adventure, more heartwarming.
So maybe like Indiana Jones in space.
Yeah, I can see. Honestly, I think Spielberg would have been a really cool pick for it, but I can understand why he did.
Yeah.
Since we were just talking about Avengers, what do you think about Josh Whedon?
I don't know about Josh Whedon. He did a great job with Avengers.
Yes.
Firefly's great. I haven't watched much Buffy, but
see, I would be afraid that he would like try to kill off Han Solo in like the first 20 minutes of the movie.
They're not going to have any of the old people in it, or they're going to be old.
Well, some people have thought that maybe it would be about them kind of passing it on to the next generation.
Well, I guess you could kill him in some tragic,
Yeah, which honestly,
would be okay at that point. I mean, it'd be sad, but it'd be okay.
It'd be okay, and I think probably Harrison Ford would advocate for it. Because I think he wanted to kill Han Solo off in the Return of the Jedi.
There might be. I don't actually know enough about Josh Whedon, but I wonder whether it would turn.
I feel like it tried to be too edgy in some ways.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Well, you could argue whether it needs to be edgy or not.
Yeah.
But I feel like what it needs is like Spielberg would do to it, more good old adventure sort of stuff.
You need.
And high stakes and stuff, and Josh Whedon can do high stakes, and he has a pretty good sense of.
That's true, and he did do a kind of old fashioned in some good ways with the Avengers too.
Yeah.
I mean, they even said as much in the movie. So I don't know, maybe, but
he is pretty good at using other people's characters in respectful ways.
We've seen that now,
but we wouldn't use a lot of. We'd be using new characters.
Yeah, and that's where it could get.
No,
tricky.
it might be a little more snarky than Star Wars normally is.
And you might have some more female characters that do some, pretty bold stuff on their own.
Who can kick butt and stuff.
Yeah,
Summer.
Some good decent things.
What is her name?
Oh, Summer Glau.
Summer Glau. River Song, or not.
That's the actress's name.
Yeah. Is it River Song? Is that
No, it is River. It's not River Song.
Yeah, that I got confused. Yeah.
Yeah, it's River Tam, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
River
her
Tam. Yeah.
from Firefly.
Yeah. Or Dollhouse.
Yeah. Well, Summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
The actress is in that. The actress's name is Summer Glau.
Yeah, I know. So. It's so, some sort of seasonal haiku sort of thing.
Okay. Anywho, next director.
Well, Christopher Nolan,
Christopher. It would become a massive puzzle.
it would be.
of some sort.
I mean, I'm not sure it would have it would have the feel of Star Wars, but it would be an awesome movie. And the thing is, there'd be a lot less green screen
Probably.
because he doesn't use that much.
Maybe it'd be a lot more in like on location stuff, and
Which would be kind of cool.
it could be interesting. You know, another Tatooine or
But I mean,
maybe not Tatooine.
I guess you could take like the whole Phantom Menace thing where it's actually the Emperor behind the or like the whole prequels about the Emperor moving pieces. It'd be like that, but like 3 times inside, and you probably have like Force dreams within Force dreams. And gambits of emperors trying to fix each other,
and the Jedi would make some pretty serious mistakes, and there'd be some moral ambiguity in some ways.
Yeah,
but
and every side would feel like even if they're wrong, like they had something they were
they had a point.
At a point, yeah,
yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. It could be interesting. I'm not sure it'd still be Star Wars, but I mean,
exactly.
And it would. The thing with Star Wars is that the point now.
It can be anything.
It can be
almost.
anything.
Yeah.
The Star Wars is now a world, a universe, and not so much a style. But the movies still have always had a certain
it's tricky.
style.
Yeah, you have your different Star Wars novels can have different feels, but it does seem like that's going to be the really hard thing about this. The movies themselves feel like they should have a certain style to them.
Yeah.
More of a
space opera.
A space opera, yeah. You want some Star Wars shouldn't feel like Farscape or Battlestar Galactica or Stargate.
Or even Babylon 5.
Or even Babylon 5, yeah. It should feel like Star Wars.
Yeah. And that's the trick.
Yeah, that's the trick, no matter what director they go with.
To keep that feeling while making it new.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I think he's already said he wouldn't do it, but I would love to see Brad Bird do it.
I threw out Andrew Stanton after.
Yeah.
After it was John Carter.
John
Carter felt like a space opera.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could have been a Star Wars-esque movie.
Right.
Especially 20 years ago.
And Brad Bird just did a phenomenal job with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. So, I mean, he's shown there that he can't, not only can he do great original stuff, in Pixar, but also through
and Star Wars
properties.
is, I mean, especially the original movies, that really are set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mission Impossible was.
Yeah. You have to understand the genre to do it well.
Right. Because it's, I mean, almost all those movies are set up and we do this here, and then we move location, and then we do this here. Return of the Jedi is 2 movies. I mean,
it is. Yeah, it's true.
Empire Strikes Back is 3. It's Hoth, and then it's Dagobah, and then it's Cloud City.
Although Dagobah and Cloud City are kind of intermingled.
That's true. I mean, but
yeah, Hoth is separate from the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a whole TV episode.
Even A New Hope is kind of that way. I mean, it takes them a long time to get off Tatooine. You don't really think about that. And
maybe
sometimes.
That's and I haven't analyzed the new movies in the same way, but there's something very space opera and old school serial about having very location episodic centric sections in a movie like that.
I guess Episode 3 did it to an extent. I mean, you had the
opening's all in the
opening gambit on the spaceship and then crashing into the planet, and then to extent. Then you had Obi-Wan.
Well, even Episode 2 is it's all Coruscant, and then it's Camino, and then it's Geonosis.
Yeah, it is all about the location, isn't it? Geonosis.
It's Geonosis. It's kind of James Bond in a manner.
I'm not sure I thought of it in that sense, like locations based.
But it is very. At least the movies have always been very heavily location centric, because they have such powerful personalities, especially in in all of them.
How weird would it be to have a Star Wars movie that took place all on one planet?
Yeah, I don't know.
It wouldn't feel like Star Wars.
Not a movie.
Not in the movie. Yeah, they've done it in books.
And comics.
Some with better success than others. But.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe that is something. You need someone who can do that. Okay, speaking of, Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson would be an interesting choice.
It would be 4 hours.
It would be 4
and 8 movies.
and the extended editions would be twice as long.
Well, and he's the only person who might also rework his own movies as often as George Lucas.
He'd carry the torch in that way.
mean, as far as CGI goes, he's probably the most.
The most versed in it, yeah.
I
In some
mean,
ways,
he's the most similar to Lucas in this sort of pushing the boundaries. Him and
Kirk Cameron, yeah.
Not Kirk Cameron. That's the actor.
Right.
James Cameron.
James Cameron, yeah. But the other advantage there is that Peter Jackson also still values locations really well.
Yeah.
So Peter Jackson could be actually a pretty interesting
If he
choice.
wasn't set up for 3 movies.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably already filmed them all, though, hasn't he?
I suppose. But then,
It takes so much post.
And yeah, take a lot of post-production time. Plus, they originally filmed 2 movies, and they're like, "Hey, let's make a 3rd."
Yeah.
So I'm sure they have to do a lot of pickup stuff
Yeah.
that they hadn't planned for originally, which is a strange situation.
Yeah. So, speaking of James Cameron,
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't
It would
know.
all be CGI.
Yeah. I don't think James.
I don't think plot would be a big deal then.
Okay, I feel like we've bashed Avatar before.
I know. I'm sorry. Because he actually he does an amazing job with this, with what he does.
Yes.
I mean, Terminator,
Mhm.
Titanic. I mean, I don't care for Titanic, but it is.
Yeah, he does. He does
Yeah.
do good stuff with what he does. But anyway, we gotta go on to the next segment here. I think. 'Cause-
Oh, so we're running out of time here.
Yeah. So.
Okay, wait. One more.
Okay.
Miyazaki.
Oh man.
I would love me.
So it would all be not CG animated, but hand drawn.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
We're going for it. Oh
Because
my!
I think he could capture some of the.
I'd love to see what aliens he could come up
Yeah.
with. So the creatures.
The problem is,
I think
it'd be kind of like Prince Mononoke in space.
Mm-hmm. Thing is, I feel like people who didn't like Ewoks taking down the Empire wouldn't like the Miyazaki version either, because it would all be about nature overthrowing the
But
Sith
see,
and stuff.
Miyazaki. Even the people who don't like Ewoks would like Miyazaki.
Okay, so maybe Miyazaki would make Ewoks cool though.
Yeah, he makes everything cool.
that's a fair point.
Totoro. I mean, he's a giant Ewok.
Touche. I can't argue with that.
Okay, so
That's
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki. Yeah, you got the Disney connection right there.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. We got it.
That'd be perfect.
We got it. Okay.
So, and actually, I will throw this out here too. This makes the perfect opportunity now that Disney has Star Wars for Yoda to hang out with Fozzie Bear.
That would be fabulous.
That would be fabulous. It's been long overdue. They've hung out with other Star Wars characters.
But they need to hang out with Yoda.
Yeah, they need to get Yoda.
I agree. All right.
All right, now for our next segment.
Sorry, that what if was not quite as funny as normal, but
But it was entertaining.
entertaining. Yeah, I
And-
wish I had more time,
Yes.
but we gotta get going here.
And because we have a very important project update. So it's been a while since we've done this, and we have a lot of stuff to talk to you
Yes.
about.
Well, what do we want to talk about first?
Well, I can't remember if we talked about Unremarkable Squire.
We've mentioned it, so I'll say it one more time. Unremarkable Squire is the novel, which you've heard way too much about this episode, that's getting published. Publication date is still uncertain. I've had some. My copy editor has had family sicknesses and stuff, and so things have been kind of delayed. But it's a very entertaining novel about this squire who is just kind of chosen on random, very boring personality, gets tied up into. It's kind of like a unlikely hero comedy thing with some extra weight to it.
Yep. You're still aiming for winter
I
sometime.
think so. Again, it could change. I don't know.
Okay. So that's something exciting to be looking forward to. I know we haven't had a chance to talk about it on here just because our recording schedule and the posting schedule has been kind of out of whack because of my job. Kept me his new job doing media and stuff. I know I've talked about that on here, and it's been great. If you haven't seen it, you should go check out our YouTube channel. Just search for Archery Tag on YouTube.
There's some fun stuff there.
And make sure you check out Zombie Clash. Did a little zombie spoof featuring Archery Tag, which I was reasonably happy with. There's some parts I wish I were different. I'm reasonably happy with, and go watch it and inflate the views because my boss keeps rubbing it in that since we put that up, we put a video of his daughter shooting an apple off his head with Archery Tag arrows, and that's already gotten more views than my zombie thing, which took way longer to make and produce. Old Hollywood saying, never work with little kids. They'll always upstage you. But anywho.
Well, I also need to mention, we have a kind of an unofficial sister
vlog
going. Our friend Nathan Marchand, who's recently listened to all and said that apparently we've mentioned him in like every episode now.
A lot, anyway.
He has a vlog on YouTube called But I Digress, talking about various writing related things.
Stuff. Much like this, what we do here. So, yeah.
And he's just starting. I think it'd be worth hunting him down.
Yep, definitely check that out.
He mentions us, so it's gotta be good.
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of a few things. Oh, and then coming next spring,
soon to DVD near you.
This is something that we've hinted at for a while because it's been in development this entire year.
Yeah, it's taken pre-production has gone on quite a while.
Yes, which we knew it would. We had hoped, I think, at some point to release in January, but we decided to hold off on that for a little bit. I think we're aiming for March now.
Well, April 1st.
April.
Yeah.
Okay. So
second quarter.
It's going to be a web fiction series. It's called Children of the Wells, and go ahead.
It will be kind of it's a kind of a modern. How do you want to describe it? Modern fantasy, post-apocalyptic.
Modern post-apocalyptic fantasy.
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
It's like it's a world that's kind of modern tech level, but they got there differently through use of magic. Magic is based around these wells. And it's about 5% of the population use magic, so they've created batteries and electricity-related things, similar things with magic. And then the wells basically die.
Disappear.
Yeah.
So kind of think the Revolution, or not the Revolution.
We don't know that.
Think Revolution is in the TV show.
Yeah.
But with magic and it takes place like right as it happens, as opposed to 15 years later.
And it'll be a series. It won't be like one novel. It'll be a series of novellas.
Yes.
That will. So it's episodic. It's kind of like writing TV episodes online.
Which, although they'll be premiering like a chapter a week.
Yeah. And I think we've got some interesting stuff planned.
Yeah, we have a very cool world developed, and we're hoping
some interesting characters going.
And we're hoping to get a lot of writers involved with it.
Yeah, we hope it to be a shared world, like we always talk about Star Wars. But hopefully, we would like other people to play in the world.
Yes.
So hopefully you'll see multiple names as we get going.
And if that's something that interests you, drop us a line, let us know, and maybe we can get you plugged in. So be looking forward to that coming up in April 1st.
In theory, hopefully. Yes,
hopefully.
We're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're working on some graphics and stuff now.
Yes.
Web stuff.
Final bit of updates is this podcast. And you may have noticed that our update schedule is kind of slackened as of late.
It's been just a slightly less, more time in between than you might have been normal.
Right.
It's gone from every 2 weeks to every month to every fortnight, every blue moon.
And so we realize it's kind of become an issue. So we're hoping to do some retooling soon. So that may mean you see some different kinds of episodes coming next year. We're still kind of trying to figure stuff out.
It will. Our plan is to continue it, but possibly in a different guise. Either we're throwing out all kinds of ideas. Different length episodes, splitting episodes into, we don't know.
Parts. Yeah, so bear with us, we'll experiment. This might be the last episode of this particular format that we've done it for a while, this length.
And while we're at it, I guess, if you have segments we haven't done for a while, like cinema selections.
Sorry, Brian.
Or other types of things you would like to see. I mean, since we're changing things, if there's stuff we can add, or we've considered doing, literary reviews more often. We've considered, other things like that.
Yeah. So yeah, now's the time to add and ask and see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
So, because there's all kinds of things we like to do with this podcast. It's just right now it's an issue of time.
Yeah.
Because Nick doesn't have any time to edit because he's got a job and writing and kids
and teaching and
it's gotten much trickier.
Children
for me.
of the Wells.
Yeah, and children developing a whole other thing, and it's gotten trickier for me with a full-time job where I edit media anyway, so I don't have much incentive to do it when I go home all the time.
What if we send some person who just loves to edit meticulously? That'd be awesome too.
Yeah, if that's you, please let us know. So, but we do hope to keep Derailed Trains alive, even if it's in some other form.
And even if it's taking some time for us to get there, find your favorite episode and share it with the world.
Yes.
Let's get more people before we get going.
There you go. So, this is kind of end of the year, sort of looking back. It's been an interesting 2012.
Been a busy year. A lot of good stuff.
Been a busy year. Not quite the year that we talked about last episode. But
No. That was our...
Those are Bizarro
our Bizarro selves. That's our sideways selves.
Another Lost reference. We haven't had that.
Oh, yeah, I got to throw it in a couple times. I mean, come on. It's only been off the air for, 3 years.
All right.
All right, guys.
We better get out of here.
Tim will eventually pick a song.
Okay. Well, first off, if you do have some
have you checked the
suggestions
email
for us-
series lately?
Actually, I haven't.
We probably have like 10 emails. We don't even know.
We should check. Just in case you want to email us, and we will check it. That email address is derailedtrains@gmail.com.
You can go to our website, which is derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com.
And subscribe to us on iTunes.
Yes, please. And if you, for some reason, you want to hunt us down on Twitter, I don't know why, but
We tend to be around there.
yeah, Nick_Hayden.
At StorytellerFrog. So,
You don't spell the ad; it's that little symbol.
okay.
Dry humor.
All right, so Nick and I wasted a lot of time trying to find the song that I was thinking of for my soundtrack. And if I've been able to track it down, I will say that the name of the song is
Angel, and it's by Dark Sword, remixed from the game Sonic and Knuckles. And the reason I chose it was because it was the first song on one of our story song CDs. It was a CD that we put together, music that inspire you to write stories. And this was the first one on one of those CDs. And it's just got a really nice, mellow, jazzy feel to it. So I hope you enjoy.
Have a good New Year. Happy Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Well, Merry Christmas if you're American. Happy Christmas if you're British.
And happy New Year, happy Hanukkah, happy anything, happy holidays. Except Donald Merriman will get onto us if we do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Better not. Anywho, this has been Tim.
This has been Nick.
And we'll see you when we see you.
Adios. I was trying to remember what was it? Aloha. That means hello and goodbye, which is good for beginnings.
There you go.
Aloha.